think one of the most important things that we ultimately need to discuss is how sleep deprivation affects health, just generally speaking, and your overall fat gain. So something I want to consider, we're going to go over a few points before I actually give some of the actual potential downsides of being sleep deprived. But sleep deprivation is actually basically the same cognitive-wise as drunk driving. And this might be an insane thing for people to think of. It's like, oh, you know, if I don't get enough sleep at night, it's almost like I took a shot at the bar. Yes, they have actually done studies on this, and people perform the same both physically and mentally if they have not had enough sleep compared to somebody who is actually considered drunk over the standard legal limit to drive. So that should already be a huge red flag of how much a lack of sleep is. Also, another thing I want to mention, daylight savings time. We're all familiar with this. In the spring, we lose an hour. In the fall, we gain an hour. So we get a little extra sleep in the fall. In the spring, we actually lose that hour. So when this happens in the springtime, when we lose that hour, heart attacks the next day, as in cardiac events, increase 20 to 25%. In addition to that, in the fall, heart attacks decrease 20 to 25% after that full-time daylight savings happens. So just from one day of poor sleep, when it comes to daylight savings time, an increased risk of heart attack, 20 to 25% the next day. These rates are insane. So that just goes to show you how important sleep is, not just long-term, but also for literally one day. And a lot of people are getting very chronically poor sleep. So this is all stacking. This is stacking long-term. This is a huge issue. It can lead to a lot of different health concerns. We'll discuss those in just a second. But think about, as we talked about in the previous section, metabolism, as in all the different things that needs to keep your body alive, all of those things that happen daily, it's very stressful. It's very demanding. So if you think about it, if you're taking away your body's opportunity to repair and recover from that, guess what? Your body is really going to start shutting down, as we'll talk about right now. If you're enjoying this too, please like the video. I greatly appreciate it. It helps out the channel, and maybe even subscribe if you're enjoying it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is irritability. This is something that a lot of people experience when they have poor sleep. They're likely not as rational. They'll lash out on people. They just won't feel like in the mood to have good conversations. And this is clearly a huge issue when we're trying to have good interpersonal communication with other people. Just being generally irritable is not a good thing. This is one of the reasons when I talked about kind of having sleep as that mental therapy, as that informal therapy, when you are able to kind of process your emotions and process how you're feeling subconsciously, at least when you're sleeping, this is a way that it can stem into your normal life if you're not getting enough sleep. So just one example of kind of that informal therapy we talked about. One of the other issues with sleep deprivation is a decreased ability to regulate glucose, blood glucose specifically. So we're talking about somebody who, maybe if you're a diabetic, this would be a huge concern for you, because when you sleep, essentially your body can't process all the sugar, process all the carbs, and maybe even signal the insulin to go out and do its thing and help to lower that blood sugar and use it for the cells and muscles in our body. So if you are somebody who's diabetic specifically, or not even diabetic, you don't want to become diabetic, sleep helps tremendously in regulating your blood glucose. So of course, on the flip side, sleep deprivation will cause huge issues in that as well, which can also lead to weight gain, as we'll talk about in this next point. So one of the things that happens, and you probably all realize this, when you don't get enough sleep, is an increased hunger signal. And there's a hormone in your body called ghrelin. When you don't get enough sleep, your body isn't able to kind of regulate this hormone as well, and it starts sending more ghrelin signals. out throughout the day, even if maybe you're not as hungry or not feeling as hungry. Maybe you've had enough food. Your body might actually be craving more just from that hunger signal, that ghrelin signal we just talked about, which can of course lead to weight gain. So if you think about it, if you're hungry and you don't need calories, you don't need that food, and you're overeating on calories, this is going to be a huge reason that leads to weight gain. And having excess body weight increases the risk of diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, so many other comorbidities, and just ultimately bad things that we don't want for our health. So this is kind of a way that sleep, both directly and indirectly, can make your health much worse. So just another important point to note: increased risk of heart disease if you are not getting enough sleep, as we talked about in that statistic earlier. Heart attacks go up 20 to 25% after daylight savings time happens. So losing that hour of sleep, 20 to 25% increased risk of heart attacks. That's absolutely insane. High blood pressure kind of coincides with this as well. You'll increase your chances of getting high blood pressure. Cognition. This is something that I think, even if you're somebody who's not trying to optimize your health and maybe get the biggest, strongest muscles or even lose body fat, having good thoughts and good cognition is super important for all of your career goals, all of your study applications. Maybe you're a student, and this is where we can talk about should somebody cut down sleep to get more studying time? Short answer: they absolutely should be sleeping more versus doing more studying. So if you could pick between an hour more of sleeping and an hour more of studying, an hour more sleeping is going to do you much better, because your overall cognition goes down tremendously if you're sleep deprived. Your overall memory and ability to actually form memories goes down tremendously as well if you are not getting proper sleep. So if you're a student or you're somebody who's trying to perform at the highest level in a cognitive task, sleep is incredibly crucial. I honestly cannot understate that. In addition to this, we talked about that informal therapy that sleep kind of brings for us. When you don't get that sleep, you're a lot more reactive. You're a lot more animalistic in your thoughts and how you ultimately move through the world and decide how to do things. So this is why a lot of people, when we're talking about irritability, they might lash out more at people simply because they can't think through the process of, oh, this isn't really a time where I need to actually lash out on somebody or think too quickly. You're just not thinking through all of your thoughts. And this is in large part due, if you're sleep deprived, this ability to process and think those thoughts goes down tremendously. So one last thing with sleep too, when it comes to memory, if you don't get enough proper sleep, this can actually increase your risk of getting dementia. And dementia is essentially a whole umbrella term of a lot of different basically memory related issues. So Alzheimer's is a big one, but as you age, a lot of people will notice this. And if you sleep on top of doing a bunch of other bad behaviors, alcohol, that's a whole separate argument. I actually had a podcast we already filmed on alcohol. Go check that out on the channel. But long story short, it can increase your risk of dementia if you're not getting enough proper sleep. If you're somebody who's dealing with chronic pain, this can also be amplified tremendously if you're not getting enough proper sleep. We talked about earlier, one of the main reasons why we actually sleep is due to the recovery capacity and giving our body, all the tissues, the ability to recover. If you don't get enough sleep, you're basically inviting in inflammation into those areas that are trying to recover. So let's say your knee is painful and there's something that's trying to heal there, but it just can't. And if you don't get enough sleep, guess what? That inflammation isn't going to be able to go through its whole process and actually fix what's going wrong in your knee, for example. So getting proper sleep is a great way to help with chronic pain. And of course, on the flip side, if you don't get enough sleep, that's also going to be extremely deleterious to your overall pain capabilities. Another big thing that we notice with sleep, if you don't get enough sleep, is a lowered immune system capacity. So basically, you aren't able to fight colds quite as well. You aren't able to basically withstand anything that's thrown at you. And this is really big concern, especially if you're somebody who has cancer, or maybe somebody who just gets sick a lot. If you're not giving yourself enough sleep, you're just running your body down even more so. Super big issue, and super big risk and issue. And again, when talking about chronic inflammation, this goes hand in hand with that too. So in addition to that, a lot of people may or may not know this, but poor quality sleep or sleep deprivation can actually increase your risk of depression and anxiety. So we're talking about increasing stress even more, which kind of goes to that never-ending circle of now I'm not sleeping as well because I'm more stressed. If you're feeling depressed, you might not get enough sleep. And vice versa, it actually increases your risk of depression if you aren't getting enough sleep. So these are really important things. And I mean, this list just never is ending, it seems, for not getting proper sleep. So something we really need to take more of a care of on society. If you are not getting proper sleep, you are being at a huge disservice, not only for yourself, but for others as well, and the others you work for and the others you interact with. We need that proper sleep. And I think going back to depression and anxiety, I think the reason why that this is so crucial is, again, from that informal therapy we talked about earlier. If you're not able to process the emotions as well, if your body is not able to kind of understand the different things, the different stressors, both mental and physical, going on outside your body, it's not going to be able to do that as well in your normal days. So you're just not balancing out the recovery very well. Another poor sleep habit that can come from it is you actually lose muscle mass and lose bone mineral density. So we're just talking about general lean body mass goes down if you're not sleeping as well. This is kind of like a fight or flight thing where your body is thinking, hey, I'm not able to recover, so I'm going to need to take some of these precious materials to help me with my activities of daily life. So making sure you're getting enough proper sleep is a great way to improve muscle recovery, which we know, but also at the same time, bone mineral density can go down if you're being sleep deprived. On top of that, sleep apnea. If you're somebody who struggles with sleep apnea, and sleep apnea, if you're not aware, this is basically where your neck circumference is too large. So when you're sleeping in the middle of the night, it basically presses against your trachea. And when that happens, you will wake up in the middle of the night. And it's something that causes lots of micro wake-ups. And as we talked about earlier, being in bed for 9 hours and having lots of microwave wake-ups from sleep apnea can maybe cut off 2 hours of your overall sleep time. And that's a huge issue. So if you are somebody who notices your sleep isn't as poor, this is something where you would need to get a sleep study for, and something basically where you want to see if you have sleep apnea, because this a lot of times goes undiagnosed. People are like, oh, I'm tired throughout the day, I don't know what's going on. It could be sleep apnea, which they do have machines for. In addition to this, you might need to lose a little bit of weight. A lot of times people who do have sleep apnea are a little bit overweight. But with that said, sometimes individuals who just have strong, thick necks actually have sleep apnea as well. Just something to consider. This sleep apnea will increase the poor outcomes from sleep that might happen from it. And then, of course, death is actually the last thing. And this is basically from all the different things that can lead up to death. So having poor metabolism regulation, having chronic pain or inflammation, having a lowered immune system, decrease in muscle mass, increase high blood pressure, all the things that happen from sleep increases basically the risk of all of these poor outcomes, ultimately leading to death. So death isn't literally going to happen from not getting enough sleep, although I'm sure that has happened. It's mainly all of the things that happen from being sleep deprived that will lead you to having an early death. So just something to consider.